Nintendo 3DS eShop may be dead and closed forever, but that doesn't mean people aren't still collecting physically for this very, very popular console. And it's not surprising when the console sold over 75 million units. And to celebrate this amazing console, today we're going to be looking at my entire Nintendo 3DS collection.
Kick us! Video game world! Rush trips! Not get your head!
Hello again folks and welcome back to a very special episode, and today we are going through my entire 3DS collection. And if I say so myself, it is one of my odder collections. You'll see why as we jump into it. It may not be the biggest collection, just over 50 games, but it is a console where I definitely think I would rather go quality over quantity. So expect to see a lot of first-party Nintendo games and a lot of games which I expect over the next few years, with the closure of the eStore, definitely be going up in price. So if you're a 3DS collector or looking to get into 3DS collecting, keep an eye on this video and make a list of the games you need for your collection. Just before we jump into the video, I want to remind you folks, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and please subscribe, as I put new videos out every Saturday live at 5, as well as bonus content throughout the week like this one, and I really want you folks along for the ride. Now, let's delve into this 3DS collection. The most important thing for any collection will always be the consoles. And this right here is my Nintendo 3DS metallic black, and you can see it's the new Nintendo 3DS. That's because there are certain games that require the new Nintendo 3DS XL. And for me, this is the best way to play these games. But here is the thing. These consoles are getting more and more expensive. I think when I first picked this up, I got it from Facebook Marketplace bundled with a copy of Pokemon Sun for about £80. Now, boxed and complete in CXs are over £200. But this is the thing, 3DS consoles do come up all of the time on Facebook Marketplace, as I'm going to show you with my very next console. In here we have a console I picked up from Facebook Marketplace. Again, this was a few years ago. So this in here, this absolutely stylish case, is one of my Nintendo 2DS consoles. So these are kind of a simpler console. Obviously they have no kind of 3D capabilities, but I actually quite enjoy using these quite often. If I'm not using the 3D, sometimes this will also be my go-to console, because don't forget, even with the 3DS consoles, you can turn off the 3D effect. But for me, I love it. I am an absolute sucker for 3D, but this is a really good console. And if you're just looking to play the games in 2D, I think this is a good go-to console. I picked this up on Facebook Marketplace with another console which I sold a long while ago. I picked up two consoles for £40. Now, you may not be able to get those deals nowadays, as these are getting harder to pick up, but they do come up on Facebook Marketplace often, and it's normally the best way to score yourself a bit of a deal. Also, if nothing else, just check out these amazing styluses. And talking of style, just this amazing Mario case. But without a shadow of a doubt, my favourite console in my 3DS collection is in fact a Nintendo 2DS, and it is this Pokemon Sun Edition. And this thing is an absolute beauty. Once again, this was from Facebook Marketplace. I think this was a £50 pickup. Now, I don't actually use this one, but just look at the design of this one. And, you know, it is a complete in-box Pokemon console. These are the kind of things, as collectors, if you are looking for something to collect for monetary value, boxed Pokemon stuff will go up in value. There's no two ways about it. They also did a lot of different variants this console. Obviously there's a Pokemon Moon one. They also did a red, blue and yellow Pokemon. These are items I would love to have in my collection, but these have a massive price tag. But it's Nintendo and it's Pokemon, and it's a thing of absolute beauty. Let's get into the games then, and we're going to start it out with some of the Nintendo heavy hitters, and possibly the biggest heavy hitter of them all, the Italian plumber Mario. But this is the thing, you have games like New Super Mario Bros. 2, which is very similar to the Mario Bros. Game on the Nintendo Wii U. Then we have Super Mario 3D Land, which is very similar to Super Mario 3D World on the Nintendo Wii U. And Super Mario Maker for the Nintendo 3DS, which again is very similar to Super Mario Maker on the Nintendo Wii U. Don't get me wrong, these are slightly different games, but for me, I am more of a home console player. If I have the choice between sitting at home playing on the 3DS or playing on the Wii U, I'm probably going to go towards the Wii U. But Obviously, if you are more of a handheld gamer, it's a no-brainer, but it was a weird period in Nintendo history where a lot of these games were released on both the 3DS and the Wii U, and who knows, maybe this is one of the reasons the Wii U didn't really sell as well as Nintendo anticipated. There are other Nintendo franchises, of course, on the Nintendo 3DS, franchises such as Animal Crossing. Now, I've never really played too much Animal Crossing. I think my wife played quite a bit of this during the first lockdown. I was, of course, playing Doom Eternal. You know, it was that weird time when they were the two big games that came out during lockdown. Very, very strange time. So I don't really know a great deal about Animal Crossing, but I know a lot of people really enjoy this game. One thing I do know is that Mario enjoys playing a variety of sports, and one of the many sports games on the 3DS is, of course, Super Mario Tennis. Now, they've made loads of these sports games, and at the moment, most of these you can pick up quite cheap. They're a good laugh. If you were looking for a sports game, you might as well have it with a Mario theme. For me personally, I think this next game is the biggest must-have game on the 3DS. It is, of course, Mario Kart 7, and arguably, I think this is one of the best Mario Kart games. I think the new Switch game just about pips it to the finish line just because of the new track expansion pack, but for the money, this is still a cheap game. This is definitely an absolutely amazing Mario Kart game and possibly one of the best games on the entire Nintendo 3DS. But the thing is about the Nintendo 3DS, like, Nintendo went back and picked up some of the franchises they'd let die for years, such as Pilot Wings. We have a Pilot Wings game on the Nintendo 3DS, Pilot Wings Resort, and this is absolutely fantastic. They might have got rid of the gyrocopter and replaced it with a tiny plane, but this is a game you can only play on a Nintendo 3DS, and trust me, this game is worth playing. So this game is kind of a spiritual successor to the last game on the Nintendo 64. This game right here is a direct port of a Nintendo 64 game. And again, arguably, this could be the best way to play this game. And I think the 3D actually improves this game. It is Star Fox 3D. And this is one, Star Fox on the N64, or Lilac Wars, it is known here in the PAL region, is one of my favourite games of all time. If I had a Desert Island video game collection, this would be the top of the list. It is a game I can sit and play the entire game through and never get bored. I've completed Lilac Wars at least 100 times. I absolutely love it, but this is a fantastic way to play this game. It doesn't really add anything, but it's just an amazing way to play it. If you don't have an N64 and you want to go back and play this game, this is the way to do it. But that is not the only game ported from the N64 to the 3DS. We of course have The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. And these are two games which I think are going to get super expensive in the coming years. This, again, for most people, will probably be the easiest and best way to play these games. They are very similar to their N64 counterparts, but they have very small differences which kind of improve the quality of life of the game. And especially when it comes to Majora's Mask, don't forget, if you want to play this on an N64, you also need an expansion pack. As I said, these games aren't too expensive now, about £20 and £40, but I think in the years to come, these two will rocket in price. There is, of course, one very big Nintendo franchise which we haven't got to yet, but we'll be coming back to that at the end of the video. But it's not just Nintendo that has some of its biggest franchises on the 3DS. Capcom also bought Resident Evil with Resident Evil Revelations onto the Nintendo 3DS, and for the longest time this was the only way to play this game on a Nintendo 3DS. It has been ported to many consoles since, but for me this is a real throwback to the early survival horror roots of Resident Evil. This is a scary game, and to this day I still think the radio operator is one of the most messed up bosses in any Resident Evil game. If you don't play this on the 3DS, just make sure you play this game. It's a fantastic Resident Evil game. Next up we have Street Fighter, and this actually works surprisingly well on the Nintendo 3DS. I think this is definitely worth picking up, and it's the same with all these games. Games such as Ghost Recon Shadow Wars, these use the 3D effects in some really clever ways. But let me know in the comments down below, when you play these games, do you play them with the 3D turned on or turned off? I know a lot of people, it can give them headaches, or they just don't like playing them, but for me, I'm a 3D player. Speaking of 3D, I think that platform and adventure games work really well with the 3D of the 3DS. I just think they add something to the look, and there's not one but two Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games on the 3DS. Now these may not be the best Turtles games of all time, but these are still both quite cheap to pick up, and if nothing else, they're pretty good games for like half an hour pick up and play kind of mentality. As I said, platformers work really well, and one of the best non-Nintendo platformers is the Rayman games. This works really nicely in 3D, and you also have Rabbids 3D, a very similar kind of game, and both these Rayman games are still super cheap for the 3DS. Racing games are also games which I think work really well with the 3DS. Games like Asphalt 3D may not be the most exciting game of all time. Yes, it is a mobile port, but I think it works really well with the 3D. But for me, the best racing game, which isn't Mario Kart 7, is Ridge Racer. This game works really awesome with the 3D. It just looks fantastic, and it's just one of those perfect kind of arcade racing games that is just really well suited to the 3DS. You can just go on, bash out a couple of laps and kind of move on. It's the perfect kind of game to play on the go, and I think with the 3D effects it just really takes advantage of the console. The Lego games are also games which I think work really well with the 3D of the 3DS. So we have not one but two Batman games. We have Batman 2 and the amazingly titled Batman 3. Also we have a game I picked up very recently, Lego City Undercover: The Chase Begins. Now if you haven't played the Lego City game, I think it was originally a Wii U exclusive, it's now on many consoles. This is a really good, it's essentially Lego Grand Theft Auto, just with slightly less murder, and yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. And my favourite of all the Lego games, Lego Jurassic World, an absolute classic game, one of the best movie franchises of all time. This next section of games are games I really wasn't sure where to categorise them. Games such as Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley. I think it's one what is like life sim games, very similar to kind of Animal Crossing. Not really my cup of tea, but perfectly suited for a Nintendo 3DS. Next up we have Katsuma Unleashed, Mossy, I genuinely don't know. I think I just got this one very cheap in a bundle, but let me know, this is a hidden gem I am missing out on. Then we have Angry Birds Star Wars, a game that was of course first on mobiles, is perfectly suited for the Nintendo 3DS. And finally, Puzzle Dragons and Puzzle Dragons Super Mario Edition for the 3DS. I think it's essentially like very similar to kind of one of those matching shapes puzzle games, but with a little bit of a Mario repaint. Just before we move on to one of the biggest oddities in my entire 3DS collection, I want to talk about what is without doubt not just the weirdest game on the 3DS, but one of the weirdest games of all time. Tamagotchi Life. This game, this game, it is so weird. Essentially, you have a town or a world, and you populate with like kind of remember the little mini characters, and you kind of give them personalities, and they just go about their lives and they do storylines. People put their friends in this, celebrities, I don't know, their mums. It's incredibly confusing. Like, it just makes its own storylines, and it is a trip. I have no idea how they came up with this game. It is one of the weirdest oddities I've ever played. It's just, you just sit back and watch the game unfold. It makes very little sense. It is very hard to actually describe this game, but trust me, get it while it's reasonably cheap now. I think in years to come, this one's going to get really expensive, but trust me, you need to experience Tamagotchi Life.
A Japanese garden, or even camping. Not a soul in... What the what? Christina Aguilera?
Surprise.
This is the biggest oddity though in my Nintendo 3DS collection. All of these games are brand new, sealed and complete in the box. Most of these I just bought when Argos just cleared all their 3DS games. All of these were under £5, some of these were £2 or £3. There is some really big titles in here, and it's kind of got to the point now where these have been sealed for a few years, like, do I unseal them or do I just wait to pick up these games cheaper and keep these sealed? Let me know in the comments what you would do, but first of all, let's jump into these games. Now, first things first, I'm not a sealed game collector, but when these games are this cheap, I kind of can't help but pick them up. So, obviously I haven't played any of these games, so I'm only going to comment like what I've seen of them gameplay-wise or what I've heard like online. Firstly, I can say this probably isn't a very good game, Teddy Together. Now, this one was an Amazon clearance for 99p, and this was at a time when you could just pick up 3DS games for very cheap, so I did pick this up for 99p. Next up we have Yokai Watch. Now I know one of these games got really expensive. I don't think it's this one, which is unfortunate as I have not one But 2 sealed copies because I don't know. I think I just went sealed 3DS crazy near the end of it then. And also games like Dillion's Dead Heat Breakers. That's quite a mouthful. That was, I think, a £2 or £3 game from Argos. And finally, Codename Steve. Codename Steam. Another game which I think was super duper cheap. Just in that end of game, like the lifespan of the 3DS, when people were just selling these games off so very cheap. This next little set of games are games that I am looking forward to playing. I just picked these up because they were cheap at the end of the 3DS life cycle. Games such as Fire Emblem's Echoes, Fire Emblem's Fate and Conquests, and you can see here Fire Emblem Warriors, which is a game which is only for the new 3DS. As I said, it is games that are only for the new 3DS. Then we have Bravely Second End Layer, a game I don't really know a lot about, but it was one I picked up very cheap at the end of the 3DS. And then we have Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Now, I did play quite a bit of Monster Hunter on the Wii U, so I haven't actually played this one. I did used to play a lot of Monster Hunter back on the PSP, so I could see how this could work quite nicely on the 3DS, but let me know, do you prefer your Monster Hunter games handheld or on a console? But here is the thing, when stores started clearing their 3DS games, it wasn't just the shovelware games, it wasn't even like the slightly lesser known games, it was even Nintendo first party games that were super cheap. Again, all of these games were under £5. Games such as Animal Crossing Happy Home Developer. This is still new and sealed, it's not really my kind of game, so I probably will keep it sealed. This one is an amazing one, it's got so cheap. Zelda Triforce Heroes. It is a Zelda game I've never played before, but this was under £5. I still have it sealed. Also, Captain Toad Treasure Hunter. Mainly for the main reason I played this game quite a lot on the Nintendo Wii U and didn't really see the point of playing it on the 3DS. Let me know if I'm wrong in that opinion, but for now it's going to stay sealed. WarioWare Gold. This is now quite an expensive game in CX, and to have it brand new and sealed is pretty cool for the collection. Then we have Chibi Robo Ziplash, another first party Nintendo game, brand new in the packet. And finally, Metroid Prime Federation Force. Now, for no other console do I have such a pile of shame. Games I have just not played, games that are brand new in the packaging. As I said earlier, I'm not really a sealed game collector, but at the end of the life cycle of a console, that is the time to pick up these games. If you want to preserve them and keep them brand new and sealed, you can get them super duper cheap. So let me know. I expect soon it'll probably be the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One where these brand new games will be super cheap. So let me know, do you collect sealed games? Do you collect sealed 3DS games? Let me know in the comments down below. We're coming to the end of this entire collection video, and there is one franchise which for me just epitomises Nintendo handheld gaming, and that is of course Pokemon. And yes, there is quite a few games from all of the Pokemon games released on the Nintendo 3DS which I need for my collection. And these are games I'm going to probably try and get sooner rather than later, as collectors we know Pokemon games always go up in value, especially as the consoles get older. But some games are still cheap, games such as Super Pokemon Rumble. Far and away not my favourite Pokemon game of all time, but it's a relatively cheap 3DS game at the moment to get from the Pokemon franchise. But I think it's games more like Pokemon X, which are going to get way more expensive. Kind of the mainline games are the ones that everyone wants to go back and experience. And at the moment, people probably haven't got the greatest nostalgia for the 3DS. But this is the thing. In like 20 years time, when people really want to go back and relive the 3DS days, this is when I think these games are going to get very, very expensive, especially this next set of Pokemon games. Of all the Pokemon games on the Nintendo 3DS, the Pokemon Fan Editions are my favourite because they are just things of absolute beauty. So in here you have a copy of the game, and it also comes with a steelbook. Now I did quite a few of this. So here we have Pokemon Sun, and I also have the Pokemon Moon one. And kind of more importantly, this Pokemon Moon inside is fully sealed. That's because I do have a digital copy of this game if I want to play it. Now I think in years to come these fan editions are going to get very, very expensive. I have another one, but there's definitely few I'm missing from my collection. The final fan edition I have in my collection is Pokemon Ultra Sun Fan Edition. And here is the thing, with the Pokemon games, there can always be two, so I really need to get my hands on the Pokemon Ultra Moon Fan Edition, because I meant to pick this up years ago. It used to be about a £20 game, it was readily available, it was easy to pick up. Now these fan editions are going upwards of £40. This is the thing, as soon as these games come out of the shop and start to get slightly harder to get hold of, this is when they get more expensive. And I think Pokemon is one of the biggest franchises. It's going to get very expensive very quickly for the 3DS. There we have it then, folks. That is my entire Nintendo 3DS collection so far. And I say so far because I know, as well as you do, there's a lot of games missing from my collection. But that's where you folks come in. I want you to let me know down in the comments below, which games do you think I'm missing from my collection? And which games would you pick up now before they rise in value? There is tons of games I need for my collection, but it's trying to work out which ones to buy now before they get more expensive. So let me know down in the comments below. We've come to the end of the video. I want to thank you folks for watching. Let me know in the comments down below, are you collecting for the 3DS? And if so, how big is your collection so far? And if not, I hope this video has given you some inspiration for your 3DS collection. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, keep playing the game. See you all soon.